Hello and welcome to the Captain's Table, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul, Berserker01, Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender at the Astropub, your professor on the Astro Historian, and your moderator here at the Captain's Table Podcast. The Captain's Table Podcast is a Star Citizen podcast where we talk about Star Citizen lore, news, and more on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Would love to have you come join us live at twitch.tv/theastropub or youtube.com/at the Captain's Table Podcast. I am joined today by two regulars of the Captain's Table with kind of if you're here because of the title, it's intentionally a little dramatic, I guess we could say. But the dramatic, the little bit of a clickbait has got a point, because I think it's inspired by a video that Red J did, which I'll leave in the top comment down below for y'all to watch if you want to. I'd suggest watching that. This is sort of a supplement to that, I guess you could say. But Red J brought up with some really good points about the current state of Star Citizen's PvPvE existence and the systemic problems that are occurring currently with that process. So, but before we get to that, I'm going to introduce you to the Sultan of Salt of Stanton, Mr. HC Vertigo himself. Who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm actually living up to that name these days. Again, HC Vertigo here. You can find me on Twitch, HC Vertigo, Blue Sky, HC Vertigo, YouTube, HC Vertigo. We've been doing a lot of CZs, these contested zones in Star Citizen the past week, and boy, have we had some experiences with the latest patch.
I like the corpse wall.
Yeah, the corpse wall was fun. The very inclusive wall where everybody belongs. So yeah, we're doing a lot more Star Citizen these days. 4.1's getting a little bit better with some of the hot fixes. They still got some rough edges and whatnot. So yeah, there you go.
And it's every day. Is there any days off you don't stream?
Tuesdays and Wednesdays we're off. Okay. Because every man needs a break.
I will ask you, Vertigo, because I'm going to drag you into this anyways. Did you see that Astroneer is getting a sequel?
I think I've seen that. Was that kind of cute little
multiplayer co-op cartoonish, like space third person space
bases
thing.
And yeah, I didn't realize it was getting a sequel. But Bloodborne is getting a spiritual successor.
Yes,
by the guys who made the original from Software, and it's only for the Switch too, so they can go fuck themselves. It's not coming to the PC, and the Switch 2 is not coming to America. Probably, maybe. Well, they're kidding. They're gonna smuggle it in from Canada.
Yes,
I guarantee you.
Fucking
black market shit.
We're turning to prohibition level. We're gonna have to smuggle in technology from outside. Some people are saying YouTube's not up. YouTube should be up. I'm seeing it right now up. It's up on the Captain's Table Podcast YouTube. So I do go live on the Captain's Table Podcast YouTube. I typically do a pre-show on my Astropub YouTube, but the actual show itself is now on the Captain's Table. It should be live. Yeah. All right. And then we've got Mr. Red J. Who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
Well, my name's Red J, of course. YouTube.com/@RedJ. I think is one of the ways you can find me. Thank you to Paul for offering to put up the link on that video. I didn't prompt him or threaten his Pico or anything.
No. I was entirely just browsing YouTube, and it came up, and I was just like, Red J did it. This is a spicy title from Red J. Let me watch this. And I watched it, and the longer it went on, the more I was nodding, being like, yeah, preach it. I 100% agree. So
from one long-term backer to another, I mean, I think we've all felt it for a long, long time, and I'm glad you're covering this today.
Yeah. Thank you for covering on your side. And again, make sure you all check out his video, so make sure it's fully there. But if you could give a quick summary for those who haven't watched it yet, Red J, what was your main takeaway from your video on the Hathor stations and 4.1's current PvPvE and Star Citizen's PvPvE sort of balance in general?
So live servers were acting up a little bit, and the little bit of experience I was getting out of Hathor was not that great. When I had Hathor B-roll from the arena commander load in free fly, I started having like these other thoughts, and I was like, you know what? Let me put this together and really think about it and how I want to condense it and then put it over it. So essentially, I did a tour of Hathor while I'm discussing the new content that's always PVX, and a few of the other like salient points are basically like PvP is never properly tested, and it really deserves to be put more in the mesh before it hits live. So I don't want to spoil the entire discussion. But.
It's more. We're going to kind of go on it and I think build off of that. But yeah, kind of general. I like the general view. It sounds the title sounds very anti PvP, but it in fact is not. It's very pro PvP. It's more of a there's a problem when it stems from it. So the first question I'm going to ask you, Red J, generally speaking, is the current state of Star Citizen PvPvE or PvX, is this a good state for the game to be in? Is this sort of like the good basis of ground for the future of Star Citizen, in your opinion?
No, because the biggest problem we have right now is there's very little incentives for players to band together. We don't have good testing of PvP to begin with. And then when people get into live or any of the test servers, aside from Evo, more on that later, one of the first things that people do is they fight. And basically, a lot of times, the first time that true realistic PvP with any sort of consequences is offered is when we hit live. And unfortunately, a lot of the content is PvX or PvP specific that CIG puts out, and they just don't know what it's going to be like until it hits live. So it's kind of like a brick wall effect. Like we're almost doing crash testing of cars, and we don't know if it's going to be a 5-star or 1-star experience until the end. You know?
Okay, Virgo. Same question to you. Do you think the current situation of PvX in Star Citizen is a good basis for building off of?
I'm gonna say I was gonna agree with Red J, but I'm gonna be a little contrary here.
Sorry.
And I think it depends on who you are, because some people love the chaos that is happening right now at Hathor, but other people hate it. And there's a group in the middle who are kind of like lukewarm about it, but it really depends on how you feel about PvP in general. But I think from my perspective, I don't like how Hathor is designed. Like Hathor feels like Jumptown 3.0,
Mm-hmm.
like with just more locations active at once. You still have like a ground location, the same problem that Jumptown had originally, which is you have a ground location which has no cover from space. So if someone decides to drop an A2 bomb on the hole that the laser blows a hole into, or if they drop a A2 bomb on one of the alignment facilities, you're going to kill a lot of people and destroy a lot of ships. And you still have that problem that Star Citizen had forever, which is you get out of your ship, you and your ship is now the most vulnerable ever, just period. Because someone could just come along and blow your ship up, and now you're stranded. You have to beg for a pickup if you're solo or if you're a part of a small org. If you're part of a large org, you're probably doing great. Like you could lock down the entire Hathor event if you have like 80 people and 30 Polarises. The other problem is we have. And I'm going to say it, Paul, and I'm going to trigger the community.
Go for it.
Star Citizen's pay-to-win mechanics, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you bought a Polaris, the Polaris is extremely difficult to deal with at Hathor, unless you have the very specific tools to deal with it, which is like another Polaris, right? Or if you have enough torpedo ships. Torpedoes are stupidly expensive. It requires you to like get past the point defense cannons of the Polaris. If you have just like a bunch of guys with some Hornets and some Gladiuses, good luck dealing with a Polaris, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Polaris is just there. And if that Polaris is there and the hole is there and you parked your ship there, that Polaris can just ram your ship until it's gone or until you can't get into it. You'll flip your ship over or something. Or the Polaris could just have one other person gunning and they could just destroy pretty much any small ship on the ground. And this event has a lot of choke points. And there was another problem I had the other day trying to run Hathor, not the other day, like last week. someone can just come in and just take all the key cards, all the component boards, and just walk off with them. And it's just like, now what do you like? If you take all the supervisor key cards from the Hathor facilities, you have like a 30 to 45-minute wait before you can get another red key card at that facility. If someone takes them all, like I guess you just go to a different facility, assuming people haven't grabbed all those yet.
And I don't think they're personal. Like the supervisor key cards are universal, right? You can use them for every station.
Yeah, you can. I've proven that before. Like whatever red card you get will work on any other red door in Hathor. I don't think you can use the pyro ones at the Hathor. I haven't tried that yet. Yeah.
And I think that's a good point, because I think a lot of folks also just farm them. They'll go to a location, they'll wait till they'll get it, they'll get the supervisor key card, and then they'll leave. Or they'll wait there and get a couple supervisor key cards and leave, and then come back to go try to look for another server so that they can find a place that's empty and then just do it there where there's no consequences.
Doing it over and over again, yeah. And so there are some mechanical problems, I think, with the Hathor, which kind of gets in the way of how that's really what this argument, I think, comes down to, is how each individual person imagines how PvP is supposed to happen in Star Citizen.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, Star Citizen has what I think is called the DayZ syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody who's played I haven't played a lot of DayZ, but I've heard people talk about it.
I'm a Bean Bandit, so I'm an original DayZ player. Right. I know what you're talking about. So
the DayZ, for those who don't know, the DayZ syndrome is basically described as you see player, you shoot player, and then you loot player. Right? That's basically the gameplay loop of DayZ.
I will simplify this a little bit more. It's the risk of you not shooting somebody is higher than shooting them. So it comes down to the point where you can't trust anybody who isn't you, and you're taking a huge risk if you try not to shoot somebody or try to talk with them. Because there's no risk greater than another person. So, and there is no reward. There's more reward to shoot somebody because you get their stuff than it is to not shoot them. Because
DayZ is one of the few games that punishes you for trusting other people.
Yeah.
If you let someone into your group that you don't know and you trust them, you turn your back, you get shot, you lose all your stuff.
Yeah.
They just loot your body, and all that work is gone. And Hathor has that in spade. Like, if you come across a random person and they decide to shoot you in the back, you lose the key cards, you lose the other stuff. I've actually had Hathor a couple times where I've managed to get a small group of people together, like 3 or 4 people, and we start doing the event, and we manage to get the laser to fire. And then as soon as the laser fired, just the entire server swarms that location. I guess the word gets out. Everybody swarms that location. You have 3 or 4 Polarises that show up all at once. You have a bunch of Hornets, Mark II Hornets with stealth components show up, and it becomes Jump Town. It just becomes a clusterfuck, and nobody gets anything out of that. Nobody can land. Nobody can get into the hole to get anything. And if you can get into the hole to get anything, you're not leaving.
Yeah.
Unless you want to walk for a couple kilometers to get someone have drive a Ursa rover in to pick you up a kilometer away or some shit. But you're not getting out of that hole. There's going to be a Hornet looking at that hole the entire time. And so you have the Jump Town problem where you have two entrances, but you have one building that you're in that people could just fly around, circle around forever. And you can't get a ship in there. You can't get anything in there to extract the resources. And there's some people who managed to get it done. There was a streamer I was watching the other day who managed to convince an Avenger Squadron to come and run
Cap for them.
Air support. Yeah, Cap for them. And they were just mining the entire time. They had a great time. So it's definitely, if you're looking to do large org activities, if you got 20, 30 people in your organization, you have the ships to do it. You could lock down a location in Hathor, and you can get all that stuff. The other problem with Hathor is resource split, right? Trying to get the resources divided to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't got that far. I don't know how the stuff respawns. I need to get my org together and actually get in there and try to do it. But the other problem is you kind of have this MMO problem. I haven't played a lot of MMOs, but I could definitely relate to PlanetSide 2. I don't know if anyone's played PlanetSide 2.
Yeah.
PlanetSide 2 had a mechanic where you capture territory in it. PlanetSide 2 is a first-person shooter game. It's a pure PvP first-person shooter, so it is a pure PvP MMO. Star Citizen is an MMO with PvP in it. It's not the primary draw, but it's in there. It's kind of woven into the design of the game. It's not the primary. Same with EVE Online. People think EVE Online is a PvP game, but it's it's part of EVE Online. EVE Online still has some NPC stuff in there. But the problem with PlanetSide 2 and the way the territory capture system worked was every day you'd log in, you'd fight, you'd push your enemy all the way back to their home base. And then everybody would be, good job, everybody. I got to go to bed, got to go to work in the morning, or I got to deal with the wife tomorrow. Even if it's a Saturday, you have to go to bed at some point, right? So everybody on your faction would log off, go to bed. You wake up the next morning, play a few minutes, and the map would be completely different color.
Yeah.
The enemy, you'd have like 6 guys log in the middle of the night when nobody was playing, and they capture everything back that you took.
Offline rating. It's a problem.
Rating.
It's a problem in DayZ. It's a problem in Ark. It's a problem with most survival games. Yeah.
And I
Rust,
think
yeah.
Rust,
if you're part of a smaller organization, that's probably what you're going to have to do with Hathor. You're going to have to figure out when the least amount of players are online, and you're going to have to go in, and you're going to have to be like a little cockroach. You have to scurry around, turn it on, and then extract what you can while nobody's.
Yeah.
And that's not PvP. That's nothing, right?
Yeah. And so I'll go on this, is that I don't think the current system that CIG has created for PvX is sustainable because it doesn't scale.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's clear.
It feels better than Jumptown. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
Jumptown was like one location or like 2 locations that would move around the map in Star Citizen.
Mm-hmm.
But Jumptown was just a cluster. Like, just from like you'd have to switch regions to maybe find a region where nobody was playing in Jumptown if it was during peak time. But for the most part, nobody got out of Jumptown unless they were doing like a conga line where they're like just everybody was taking turn grabbing boxes, which does happen.
Yeah.
That was kind of cute.
But also, Jumptown was never designed for a situation where you had more than 100 people. Like, most Jumptowns, like, I think the last Jumptown didn't even have 100 people in it. It was like 60 or 80 was the maximum number, and they may have been like 100, 110 sort of thing. But with a Jumptown, for instance, you can count on maybe half of the entire population of a server just not being interested in playing it. Mm-hmm. So you have, it's like a 30v30. So it's like a battlefield map, which you can balance. And the thing is that the Hathor stations and the Hathor missions, the Align and Mine missions, those are clearly designed around a 32v32 experience. It's designed around, I would be shocked to find out that CIG was doing playtesting with more than that. Because based off of each of the locations and based off of the spawns, and it's clear that this was not designed for the reality of Star Citizen, which is
it was not designed for PlanetSide 2 levels of players where you have like 1,000 players per faction, and you could potentially have 1,000 players in like a single building.
Yeah, exactly.
And PlanetSide 2 had to deal with the realities of that, and they had to cull geometry. You would have essentially a cloaking field tech deployed over an entire army, where you'd be walking through a hallway, and then suddenly you'd have an entire enemy team materialize in front of you 5 meters ahead. Like, you'd literally take a step forward, and suddenly there's just a bunch of enemies. You take one step backwards, and everybody's gone.
Yeah, and I think that's the main issue, is that the problem is that it was built for 60 players.
Theaters of War.
Yeah, and 150 people are showing up at any location, and because of that, it makes the event not engaging. There's more issues which we'll talk about here in a moment, but I think that is the fundamental issue, is that CIG still hasn't nailed the scaling of these sorts of events.
Absolutely.
As somebody who plays DayZ, I haven't played it in a bit. I played it a little bit last winter, but has played DayZ, has played Rust, and played Ark. I played a lot of the survival games when the genre was still forming, and learned all of those sort of tricks and experiences. The problem with all survival games is that after that initial rush of excitement and playing the game and getting a new server in, that dies off after you start achieving your goals. And the only reason why you go to locations is because the rare resources or the rare items spawn there. So you go there to risk it for the biscuit, as it were.
Yeah.
But even in those cases, the Northwest Airfield in Trinaris in DayZ, I could go to the Northwest Airfield in Trinaris as a solo player and still come out with gear, even on a high population server, because I can still maneuver around my enemies. I still have cover. I still can be able to trick them or like get behind them and
sneak in and grab something and then leave, get the hell out. Right.
There is no way to do that in the current event. So there's
go
ahead.
You don't, like, even if you're on foot, someone can just, like, you still have that funnel, that hole in the ground where all the cool resources are. You can go in on foot as a single person, but if anybody's watching that hole, you're not getting out.
Exactly. Because there's an almost unlimited amounts of approaches to the Northwest Airfield, it becomes very difficult to lock down. And that encourages solos, small groups. I have seen single people or small groups wipe entire, like, massive groups at Northwest Airfield. And I've seen that in multiple different, like, games, similar, like Rust with its different, like, unique locations. Because they don't funnel players in the area, because it's very open, it becomes a lot easier to approach. The unique nature of Star Citizen is that they, like, especially with, like, Hathor, there is a choke point. And when there isn't a choke point, anyone can find anyone anywhere. And there's really no counters to certain things. Like you said, like the Polaris is fundamentally a problem because there is no way to counter the Polaris effectively. And so if someone pulls out their wallet and pays $900 for a spaceship, it becomes almost impossible to fight them unless you have your own $900 spaceship. And the only way to get it in game is to play the event, which everyone has the Polaris in the first place. Yeah. So
that right there is probably the most ironic thing in Star Citizen. I love satire. I love irony. I love to point this out that people who bought a Polaris are grinding the event to unlock a Polaris in-game through Wikilo.
And there's a lot of other things. I think the main problem that currently happens is that a lot of these events feel like, and I'm sure they are, events designed with engineering, scanning, various other portions of the game which are not in the game yet. They're designed around these features of what the game will be, because A Lion in Mine's not going anywhere. It's going to be Ghost Hollow or the Korea heist missions. It's gonna
post Korea,
It's always going to be there. So they're building it with those elements in mind, but currently those elements don't exist. Heck, I mean, I remember I was talking about this with Zero on the Launch Sequence podcast with Tomato, and Zero pointed out we don't even have PvP bounties anymore. Like this event is perfect for a PvP bounty hunter, because the likelihood of you finding your bounty at one of these Hathor stations is pretty high, because there's going to be a lot of folks who are going to do some pretty messed up things, and the natural counter to that is PvP bounties. But there just really isn't any other features in there, like reputation, even like prison doesn't really work properly. So it feels like an implementation of something that doesn't have the resources it was designed to, and was never designed for the scale upon which it's actually functioning at. So I think CIG needs to fundamentally step back and look at how they design these and figure out ways that they could either build these events at the scale that they want to build them at, or figure out how to build events at the scales that they have, because we're only going to go up from here. I highly doubt that CIG is going to stay at 600 players per server mesh forever. That's going to go up. It's probably going to go up to 1,000 more. They're going to try to push that level as high as they possibly can as they go through. And I'm sure they'll figure out ways of stabilizing it. They'll have some unique things like this dynamic server meshing and such. But if that's the goal long term, they have to start thinking about how to build missions and events at that scale now, not when they achieve it and then go, oh, whoops, You know?
Maybe just add more Hathor facilities, copy paste.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that here in a moment, but in fact, let's go with that, and I'll start with you on this, Vertigo. What are some suggestions for improving the current Hathor missions, and even going forward, how to improve the PvX experience?
I mean, obviously, you could just add more Hathor laser facilities, right? Yeah. Copy paste a couple more, and that would help diffuse the player base, the large amount of player base over a larger, wider area. Maybe have the laser, like I said, like you talked about Cherno with the airfield, like having ways of getting inside that little cave where you can escape. You can sneak in, grab a little bit of minerals, and escape from it. Because right now, like, it has good bones, right? If you like PvP, there's targets there to have. It's just the funneling gets really bad, especially when like the Polaris shows up. Like, even if you have like a bunch of Hornets, the Polaris shows up, even if it's just one person in the Polaris, it's like, what are you gonna do? Like, really can't take a Polaris down with like 2 or 3 Hornets because of just how tough the shield. And even if the Polaris start getting the shields down, the Polaris guy just leave, and it's just like another Polaris shows up that's not part of that guy's org. But yeah, definitely trying to remove like the funneling a little bit would kind of help for like the smaller orgs or the solar players. But I don't think that's what CIG wants. I think they want like Jump Town, kind of like it looks cooler when you have like a large fight when you're uploading to YouTube and Instagram and whatnot. Like, oh, look at this! Look at the mobile infantry fighting. You know, all these people. Like, oh, look at the lasers everywhere. Pew 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 pew. That kind of stuff looks pretty cool, right? For like the marketing. Yeah. If you're trying to play Hathor, and it's just you and your buddy or your friend. You're trying to get some of those rare materials from that hole. Like, if you got 4 places to check out, and if every place has like a large org hovering over it, good luck, right?
All right, Reggie, your thoughts? How could CIG improve this PvX experience with Hathor or going forward?
For Hathor specifically, I would have it so the train ends at the end of the cave, like it goes into the cave, the freight trains. Or if that's too much work, I would just have, as Vertigo noted, a few different other solutions to get inside. I feel like this is an example of testing not being done correctly for PvP environments, because they did a heck of a good job designing other parts of the map, but then the final bit and piece they added is as you both noted, a choke point. And if they would have designed this as much as they designed the other parts of the map, it would have been far less painful like that. The other thing I think that Hathor desperately needs is an anti-Polaris solution, so people can fight on the ground, capture, like I'll steal the Battlefield 2142 idea, anti-Titan missiles, make them invulnerable missile systems that the Polaris can soak a certain amount of damage, and then it's like, okay, I got to get out of here. Like, the Polaris can come in, swoop in, cause some trouble, and then has to get the heck out of there before its shields are completely knocked out.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I one of the things I can think about right now is Helldivers 2, where you can activate SAM sites, and those things are godly. They will destroy any flying threats that come in like one shot. And they're basically invulnerable, but they're limited, you know. So yeah, I could see that.
You mean like a ballista? Like, the ballista's not going to do shit to a Polaris.
No, but like
the automated PDs will shoot down anything you throw, any missile or torpedo you throw at the Polaris right now.
Yeah. But that's the thing.
Unless it's like you could just turn around and call it a size 12 missile, a size 12 torpedo, and make it so the PDSs just do not have enough damage to knock it out. Even if you have 10 PDSs on that target, it still pops you, and it does like half the Polaris's shields in one hit. 30 seconds later, another one's coming. You better get out of here.
Or you could just have a big cannon, like it fires railgun shots. You know, like interest railgun shots, just built into the ground. But some sort of like anti-Polaris situation.
Let me massage your mind there, Paul Shelley of the Astropub, with some deep science fiction lore that Chris Roberts just never. How about a coil gun, a mass driver built in to the site that is designed to launch the minables into orbit, that's repurposed into a weapon?
A weapon.
Ooh.
And
Yeah.
that's a secondary objective that you could do to clear the area. I think another great example of this is this the shield technology they want to do, where you can make a site invulnerable in the future.
Bubble shield. Yeah.
Bubble shield. Some sort of thing where like, nope, you can't do anything. Once you get in that shield, you can't even fly into that shield. So
To add to that, storms. Storms are already in the writing. They're adding them.
Right.
You could have the storm knock out ship shields, and also let's just have the storm knock out ship PDSs.
Just to have a constant storm around the area. Yeah.
It disables targeting, so you can't see what the hell you're doing. So you have to go on foot underneath the storm. But going back to one of my favorite games of all time, this was actually a plot point in that game, an actual mission. Independence War, the Starship Simulator, had a mission where one of the mass drivers in the Sol system, I think it was from the moon, got knocked off course. No, it was a terrorist organization took over one of the mass driver facilities and launched a payload at Earth. And you had to get like a special catch thing to intercept it. And so you had to figure out how to line up the course for the payload, and you had to catch it in this electromagnetic thing, and you had to slow it down using your ship. It was like a whole mission.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, you could have like a mass driver built into the surface of a planet that's designed to launch packages into orbit.
Yeah.
That are
you can
hot.
aim. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can aim it a few degrees. If a Polaris comes in, you can line up the shot and bang, that Polaris is either dead or just really having a real bad day.
Yeah. And I mean, these are all crazy, not crazy ideas, but some of these things are things they could do. They have a giant laser. They have a pre-made giant laser.
Or you could just allow
do.
us to turn the laser back on and just kill everybody in the site. Just a gigantic reset button to troll people with.
I think I'm going to say something that's controversial, and I'm going to say this in a controversial way that gets people discussing, because CIG's already said this. I think one of the solutions they need to do is to instance these. Have a hard limit number of people who can go into them, and using something like a storm, an eternal storm that's around these areas that's been kicked up because of sci-fi bullshit, whatever, just some sort of science fiction wibbly wobbly explanation as to why
CIG is going to have to instance like stuff like this.
You
cannot have 1,000 people fighting over Hathor or 2,000 people fighting. PlanetSide 2 tried to do this kind of stuff, and they had to pull back. And I don't think CIG is going to break that limit. There are limits, physical limits, to what you can do with internet connections, like latency and bandwidth. If you want to have real-time interactions, you have to make some sacrifices. Anyways, go ahead, Paul.
Well, and that's the thing is that they're already going to do this. They've talked about instanced Vanduul invasions in Nyx. They've talked about the depths in Area 18 as an instanced PvE experience. So I think if CIG is going to build this with the idea of 30v30 or 60 people all out fighting each other, then they need to hard limit it. I think that's just long-term the easiest solution, because that also allows the developers to go, to be able to say, this is designed for 30, 60 people. This is designed for 100 people. Allows them to build that range of possibilities without building something and then immediately the players going, lol, lamau even, and just throwing 1,000 people at it and breaking
just throwing 1,000 Auroras at Hathor, and it's just like, good luck. Our wreckage will block your guns.
Exactly. There's always going to be a solution that players will be able to outthink the best design documents.
And that was another thing, like malicious players going in with the idea of just making everyone's time just awful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could go in with a Polaris and you can put a Polaris's nose right into the hole, and nobody can get past that Polaris's nose. Yeah. Or you could just blow up something over the hole and block it with wreckage, and nobody can get it out. You try to come in with SRV, good luck, we'll blow that up. Just more wreckage.
I think what they need to do is they need to start thinking about this in ways of how can we figure the problem out with systems we have now and systems we're building. And the other big thing is, this is going to be related to something else, and I'll talk to you all about this next. I'll start with you, Reggie, on this one. But I think that CIG needs to make the resources available. They should not be forcing PvE, or should I say PvX experience on everybody, especially if there is specific requirements for other missions to acquire resources, like there is now with both Wicklow and uh, why am I blanking on their name? Riari. Both of those mission chains require you to get the resources, which are only available at a Lion Mine. And while I know directly from Elliot's mouth that the idea is that this isn't going away, so when this is no longer the flavor of the week, people will stop camping that, and you will still be able to achieve those. The problem is that there will always be the risk of someone just deciding to be a dick, and there's no counter against that. Or because there's currently no counters. So having a small chance of some of those resources procking elsewhere is a good idea. But I think CIG needs to step away from the idea of forcing players into a PvX experience when they have said in their own statements that this game is designed for everybody. Obviously, not every action is designed for everybody, but especially the story element, the story that they're currently trying to tell, the B story, which is science story, is like, oh yeah, by the way, scientist, here's a gun, go shoot people in the face. Industrialist, you want a mine? Cool, here's a rocket launcher, blow up that ship. Like, that's not exactly the experience that somebody who is a miner or a scientist wants to experience. Exactly. And there's no way of getting like in-game way of getting people to say, hey, I'll cover you, you do this for me. There's just, the systems aren't there yet. So until those systems are there, they should be developing with the limitations they currently have and then updating it later.
I'd almost have to disagree with you a little bit, Paul, because there is a way for PvE players to acquire these resources. You can trade with the people who have them.
True, right? But there's no system in place, as we just said, for you to be able to acquire those resources. There's no trading system. There's no
I would argue that, yeah, you could just go to a Discord server, or you could just at people and say, hey, I'm looking for this, waiting to buy, willing to buy.
But that's not in the game. And that requires, so we're talking about the average person is going to have to go to another Discord server or trust somebody.
Game. Yeah.
It's a design problem. Red Jay, your thoughts on, should CIG still be locking like story points behind PvX experiences?
No, and I just want to go back one step real quick. I remember with Orison, when we had Siege of Orison, there was no ship allowed zones where you could only use the ships and the vehicles provided on those platforms. Mm-hmm. And CIG was able to dictate how fast or how slow the progress would go, because the commander had to spawn, you'd get the code from the commander, that would activate the next shuttle, and you had to take that shuttle that was on a direct programmed path back to the next platform. I think CIG needs to go back to that system and kind of look at what worked and what didn't. Because I remember, even me and some friends, we would go around just grabbing outfits out of there and finding neat props and stuff for different machinimas and things. And like, we had, not once did I get shot by a player, not once. And the NPCs were not a threat. The AI was so bad most of the time.
The reason why you didn't get shot by a lot of players in there, because it was the Red faction had a hard time getting into Orison to get access to that. Because if you decided to become a criminal in the event itself, like, you'd get shot by everybody, right? NPCs would be shooting at you, players would be shooting at you. But you couldn't go in there with crime stat, and that's what Hathor is missing right now. Is crime stat right now doesn't mean anything in Stanton other than you can't land in some places, right? If you have CS5, the stations will shoot at you, but we don't have like an NPC immune response like Concord and EVE Online, where you just get randomly ganked by a bunch of UE security to waste your time and whatnot. You can't leave because you have a whole bunch of mantises spawning around your ship. Right now, the PvE bounty hunting missions are busted, from my understanding.
Yeah,
so that would help, like, kind of cramp down on the amount of shenanigans that happen at Hathor. But
Reggie, you said that was a step back, but like, going forward, how should CIG balance this sort of desire for players to interact with one another in this PvX experience, PvPvE, with like also story progression, with being able to like participate in a story or event, especially non-combat story?
I see it as like, a branching pathway, at least in the near term, where you can have a PvP high risk, high reward environment, but the same exact content can be experienced in an instanced environment as well. So I'm thinking of like a clearinghouse, like you land at a place, it's the brand new place. Our good friend, our new friend Nabanu, the Wicklow, he shows up, or whoever is there to tell you about their new problem, and then as the player, you choose to go on the storyline pathway of I'm taking the high risk, high reward route with my friends or by myself, or I'm going into an instance, but the rewards are lessened by the instance. I feel like that would be a fair thing. And I know not anybody would be perfectly happy, but I feel like both sides would feel like they're getting something out of it. I still get the content without the risk, or I get risk first reward, I get the adrenaline rush, and I get more than everybody else. Isn't that great? You know, like I feel like that's a fair compromise. It's a question of how you balance that, though. Like how much is fair for each side to get.
Vertigo, how should CIG be balancing this PvX experience with? Because I know you are very much in similar camp that I am. That like this is a multiplayer game. People should be interacting with each other. How do you balance that reality with also the reality that many people aren't here to interact with other people? They're there to enjoy the game alone or with small groups. And in terms of like
or
these
they're just there to cause chaos, you know, there's people out there who they just want to log on and play Call of Duty and Star Citizen, right?
How do you balance some of these issues long term for these sorts of events?
Reputation, crime stat, that kind of stuff. Like if you're if you're out there just to kill people, like you should lose the ability to peacefully operate in a system. Like you can't land anywhere, you can't resupply anywhere. You lose the ability to buy supplies, you lose the ability to land, you lose the ability to maybe you lose the ability to use United Earth credits. Like anywhere in the Empire. You have to like barter trade with like the Banu if you're going to Stanton to get anything. Or maybe you lose the ability to respawn in Stanton. You just immediately bounce you back to Pyro when you die. Instead of prison. So reputation would be the definite like nail in the coffin for like shenanigans around these events. Working criminal system. You should have to like when I was doing Hathor, like I noticed that almost nobody bothered turning off the comm array when they started shooting. Like everyone was killing you with comm array up most of the time. And that should be like something like if you really want to cause trouble, you have to disable the comm array, which everybody notices, right? Like, oh shit, the comm array's down. Let's get the hell out of here. But we have some of the tools already, but long-term reputation, right? Players can align themselves with corporations, and if those players get attacked by other players, the aggressing players lose reputation with a lot, because Freelancer had this, where a lot of the corporations were aligned with whoever, whoever the government was, right? And if you pissed off corporations enough, you'd start losing rep with the overall military, like the militia for, I can't remember the name of the factions. Who was the Liberty faction?
It's like Space America and Space France and
Germany, Space France, Britannia. Britannia, I remember one of them is called Britannia. So if you attacked one of the corporations in Britannia, you'd slowly start losing rep with like the police and the military. And if you really start to go hardcore into piracy, eventually the military would just start attacking you on site. But you had to put a lot of effort into that point. But if you attacked other corporations from other factions, that maybe if they were at war and whatnot, you'd actually gain rep with like the military and whatnot. So there's a way to massage your rep back into standing. But Star Citizen kind of has that right now, where you have rep in Pyro, where you have Citizen for Prosperity versus Headhunters. It's impossible to become friends with both. If you start building rep with Citizen of Prosperity, Headhunters doesn't. You start building rep with Headhunters, Citizen of Prosperity doesn't. And so I think we're going to be going that way in the future. But like right now, it's just kind of a cluster. I think reputation would definitely.
Go ahead,
for it.
So one of the things with reputation is that general situational awareness for a lot of players is pretty difficult. You barely know who's around you at any given time. And I feel like building into what Vertigo said, I have also said it myself in the video and other times, that we need long-term reputation that matters. You don't just log off in Kletcher and then you come back or a new build and it doesn't matter anymore that you were a murder hobo for 6 months. it should be long-term, persistent, difficult to break. And also it should be, as long as the comms array are up, that you can tell if somebody has bad rep once you scan them down, like if you identify them.
On foot scanning, yeah, some way to identify people on foot as bad actors.
Yeah.
Bounty scanner or something, I don't know. They scans your DNA, like, oh, that guy's wanted in 12. He has a death penalty in 12 systems.
I agree with all of these. I think again, a lot of this comes down to the fact that CIG just has systems that are waiting to be added that aren't in yet. So a lot of it is, my critique would come down to CIG needs to have those systems implemented before they start adding mission PvX experiences that are there. A great example of, I think, the perfect balance of this is CZs. CZs are perfect for what Star Citizen is right now. Start the question box.
Cool,
I forgot to do that.
Cool little instance combat zone that has a little bit of PvE in it, a lot of PvP in it.
With some rewards,
Yeah, rewards are in there that are worth getting most of the time. And then you can, if you do all the CZs, you eventually get access to executive hangars, which unlocks an even bigger reward.
Yeah. So like, and that even has PvP elements to it as well. Like but it's all built around what Star Citizen is capable of right now. And I feel like A Line in Mine is what Star Citizen should be in the future. It's like built with a lot of ideas in there that aren't there. And Reputation, I think, is the killer one, because one of the things that CIG's talked about and said, they have claimed it's in the game, and they either haven't turned it on or it isn't working properly. But reputation hostility, like what should be happening is people who are just murder hoboing their way through a location should immediately show up at Hathor, and NPC ships should be spawning. NPC, Crusader Security or Person Security should be showing up and then attacking them, like almost instantaneously. There is ways of using NPCs or using PvE solutions to PvP problems, so that there's be some sort of consequence for your actions. And I think that's the biggest issue, is that there are no consequences to any actions. And either being, I'm not even just talking about people being murder hobos. I'm talking about people who are fighting over something and intentionally trying to block other people, saying, well, if I can't get it, nobody can get it. That sort of mentality, that itself is toxic, and it breaks the game. And there definitely needs to be ways that CIG doesn't force players into this situation without a solution that they can get themselves. That's, I think the major issue. All right, so let's wrap this discussion up, because we're almost finished here. And I'll start again with you, Red J, on this one. Is there anything else that you would want to talk about with CIG in regards to this PvX experience and how to improve it? Issues that may be sort of that they can't see in general. If you could talk with CIG about this right now, what would you sort of pitch to them as a solution, or explain the problem and pitch the solution?
I would go back again and say two different things. One, situational awareness tools, so players know if the person near them is a major threat or not. And by the way, that cuts both ways. Pirates like to intimidate when they're doing things most of the time, I would argue. I guess that's the Eve effect. But the other thing I would say is that there needs to be changes to the test server process if you really want to test PvP. And I don't want to change the whole conversation, because that's probably a whole day for you, Paul, if you wanted it. But I would say that entire process needs to be rehauled. I'm just going to leave it at that.
I forgot to mention that. I think that is also the crux of the problem, is that they're not testing for what they have. So they need more feedback. And I maybe I should change this question up a little bit more, because I think that's another issue that's from that perspective. I have heard many dedicated testers who basically have said, I don't test anymore. CIG doesn't listen to me.
Can I soapbox for 1 second?
Go for
it. Evo does not allow for proper PvP testing at all. Full stop. There is no non-consensual PvP. So how can you test PvP? In the PTU builds are too short build to build. So there's no way to test like a real world accumulation and then people are getting killed, or anyone's doing hours and hours of testing because it's too unstable. There's either a lack of consequences or no persistence testing on either one of them. Evo in particular, because there's no non-consensual PvP allowed under pain of being thrown out, it does not test PvP, full stop.
Okay. So do you think the current system functions? This current system, testing system, do you think it's good for Star Citizen right now and going forward?
I like what the PTU does. I like the idea of having a test server. I like that we differentiate. Paul, I'm going to steal your idea earlier when you talk about stable versus unstable. I think that's a great way to look at it. So I'm just going to leave it there because I've soapboxed enough.
That's fine. No, I 100% agree with you on that one. I think that's, for those of you who don't know, I've pushed this idea in the past, and one of the things that I think it shows it works is that CIG's already done this. They've done a stable versus unstable server. They did it with 4.0. 4.0 preview with 318 in the background, or 324 in the background is what it was. 324.2 or 3 or whatever it was. And I think if you made it actually stable and like functioning, if CIG could get the base right now to a good solid point, 317.2 or whatever, we've had those patches before where they're just like, this is good. It's good as it is. And then just said, this is it. We're moving forward with another build, which is just whatever we want thrown into it, and just have it run as this preview channel EPTU situation where they can throw any new thing in there and it can be as broken as they want it to be while they figure it out, and then just don't up the stable branch until Invictus or CitizenCon, or just before CitizenCon, or just around IAE. Update the game 3 times a year to the stable branch, and then you still get the participation with the unstable because you can build on your reputation and your resources and everything else like that. But it's just also, you're likely going to lose a lot of that because it's unstable. But Vertigo, your thoughts on the current PTU system? Does it work or not? Especially in regards to this question about the PVX.
It works for general gameplay and bug fixing and whatnot, getting feedback. But when CIG is, I've given feedback to CIG before in the PTU, and they don't listen. They just release stuff. They have an idea of how stuff is supposed to work, and they know better than us, it feels like. And honestly, after 318 was like 9 months of PTU. I'm PTU'd out. Yeah. I mentioned this in the pre-show, but I want to mention this again because I think it's a good anecdote for Star Citizen. I think a lot of people are getting sick of testing the PTU. They want to play on live where stuff matters, acquire things, right? You can actually content, regardless of how unstable it is. 4.1 had a brief time after it was a day or two after it was released, where it just shat the bed, and that CIG had to come in and do hot fixes. And it's getting a little bit better now that they've gotten hot fixes and server maintenance, which is great. I appreciate that, CIG. Server maintenance, good idea. But back when I was playing Overwatch, season 1, 2, and 3, they were having problems with balance. And people, the community would come in and talk about how awful it is to play against this character, how this character was underpowered, this character was too overpowered. You see this character all the time. I don't know how to deal with it. For some reason, Junkrat was a problem in the first 3 seasons of Overwatch. I don't know how that happened, but apparently, Junkrat was if you were in non-competitive game mode, if you were in the casual game mode, Junkrat was terror or something for a lot of people, but whatever. So they decided to add test servers to Overwatch, which was a good idea. And the problem was they'd put a bunch of balance changes out onto the test servers, and they'd have to beg people to play, beg people that were playing to give feedback, because you'd have people who wouldn't play on the test servers. You'd have people who would play on the test servers but wouldn't leave any feedback. And what ended up happening was you'd have a very, 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 very tiny part of the community. Overwatch is a much bigger game than Star Citizen. I'm pretty sure they have a larger daily active user count than Star Citizen. But you'd have a relatively small portion of the community giving all of the feedback. And then you'd release that patch live. Okay, cool. Like, we're getting a lot of positive feedback on our changes. You release that patch live and you just get inundated, like a deluge of negative feedback after you release the patch live. And you're like, why weren't you guys on the PTU? Because people don't want to play on the PTU. They don't want to play on the test server. They want to play on live with their friends. They don't want to have to download. Like, we go back to that engagement level for the player base. A lot of people don't read the forums. A lot of people just watch CitizenCon for Star Citizen. That's it. That's their news for Star Citizen. Or they see an advertisement for Star Citizen and like, oh, a new ship for Star Citizen's out. I'm going to take a look at that. Or they never do that. They just log in and they play. I've seen it. I was playing Battlefield 3 for years, and for a longest time, you'd only see the M16 being used by a lot of people. People would unlock that one gun, and they'd only use that one gun forever and a day. They get the one gun that worked for them. And so you're going to have that problem where people just don't know the PTU exists. They know the PTU exists, but they don't care to play it. They play the PTU, they don't give feedback. They play the PTU, they give feedback. But at that point in time, the amount of people who care starts dwindling more and more and more. And you end up with people like the discussion we're having right now, and I'm going to call this out right now, is the people in this discussion may not be very hot on the idea of PvP, right? So we may have a slightly, if you get like Avenger 1, Moist Noodle, Dark Law in here, like, or a Zero State, like what's their opinions going to be for PvP and Star Citizen, right? Probably a little bit different than what our opinions
For sure.
But you're going to have a skewed sample size when you eventually get to that point, when you have people giving feedback on the forums for the PTU for events like this. It's great for bug testing, bug fixing, but when it comes to like having like major flaws in global events, like you're going to get a handful of people who bother replying, and it's probably going to be the same people every time.
Yeah, I think that I think we're reaching a point in Star Citizen's existence where testing needs to be more than just finding bugs. Because let's be honest, the PTU hasn't been about finding bugs for 5 years.
CIG has a gigantic list of everything that's wrong with Star Citizen, and there's a lot of bugs that are going to be fixed by just replacing systems wholesale.
Yeah.
Or there's a lot of bugs that cannot be touched because dynamic server meshing's coming, or server meshing's coming, right? There was just like for the longest time, the shield system, right? Remember SDF technology, signed distance field tech? The old shield tech they were using before signed distance field tech, there was tons of ships with shield holes in them, and CIG would have to go in there and manually adjust geometry on the shields to get those shield holes to go away. The Saber had a really nasty shield hole for the longest time right on its nose. So if you were fighting a Saber, the Saber would just melt immediately against any ship because it just didn't have shields on the most important part of the ship. And of course, CIG was like, signed distance field is going to fix all this stuff, right? And eventually, that's why CIG didn't bother touching certain ships unless it was really bad, like the Saber. They eventually patched that specific shield hole.
But I mean, and some people are saying like, it's like, oh, come on, CIG does test. And yes, the PTU does have some limited things of, say, trying to find bugs that CIG can't find, but it's the scale. That's really the thing about PTU is it's them scaling testing, because they don't have the ability to scale to the number of people that they want to test at internally. And because the PTU is shrinking in size in terms of players playing it, they have to rush through the PTU so that they can get it to live. And that's why everything breaks in live, because it's the first time that most CIG will actually have the number of players they're supposed to have in the game in the first place to test to see if these systems function. So,
and that's why 4.1, before it released, was actually running pretty good. 4.1 released, it was running pretty good, and the next day it fell on its face, because then the real problems started showing up after the servers had been up for a couple of days.
Yeah.
As opposed to PTU, what happens with PTU, CIG releases a new patch every 24 hours on the weekdays, and then you have the PTU running, for the weekend, right, for like 2 days, and then Monday rolls around about midday, CIG releases a new patch, and that kind of covers up some of those issues, because you're basically restarting the server every time you release a patch, from my understanding.
Yeah, and so you don't see the sort of actual environment that they would be playing in. I think that the key should be going forward that CIG, the testing at CIG from CIG should be less about finding bugs and more about playtesting. It should be more about does this work does this elicit the goal, the result that we want from it? And if it doesn't, or if people are saying we don't want this result, to be able to figure out why. Because when you have a PTU or a testing phase where you could bring in myself, you, and Red J, and then compare our examples from that to like Burke's Zero State and A1, and see what our experiences are, that could give them more of an understanding of what people are experiencing. And I'm not just saying that for because we're all content creators, but also average person. You can get that average person feel. There needs to be a purpose behind it that will actually help the game long term, I believe. But that's just my thoughts on that. Hopefully, I think we're a little scattershot here, but I think we have a good tackle on this. Let's wrap up this discussion. Is there anything else you all want to add, Red J or Vertigo?
I think we did a pretty good job.
Red J?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot left on the table, and that's a good conversation. It's like when there's a lot of leads there, and I appreciate the audience participation.
Mhm.
I know we're all different perspectives. I'm a mix of PvP, PvE, so I'm the perfect PvX, where, like you said, Vertigo, some people, if they're on the panel, they'd be more gung-ho or not.
Yeah. And again, watch the video that Red J did. It's a great video on kind of this whole situation. It's more it's a lot more condensed, especially talking about the testing issue specifically, and how CIG prioritizes fixes and other things like that. So go check that out. I'll leave that in the top comment.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you're watching this after the fact, I do this live at twitch.tv/theastropub, youtube.com/@the-captain's-table-podcast. And we do this on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. We'd love to have you come join us live there. If you did enjoy this, hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and hit the bell icon to be notified. Hit the bell icon to be notified when it's released. I want to hear your thoughts down on any of these things in the comments down below. I do try to respond to them or read all of them. I may not respond to everything, but I do try to read all of them. So try to keep it constructive. Do you agree that this is a problem? Do you think this is perfect? Is there solutions that CIG could do in the near term rather than just make the game sort of solutions? How about the PTU? Is the PTU still a functional, good testing environment in y'all's opinion? Let me know that and more down below. And like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.